Welcome to Walsh College, our beautiful Creator Lab studio. I am so excited to be joined today by one of our amazing Walsh College alumni and Board of Trustee, Mr. Brian Pilarski. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Susie. Pleasure to be here. The studio looks great.
Oh my goodness, we are so proud of this studio. And you got to see it before when it was the bookstore, and now it's our Creator Lab, and we're making just such amazing content. In fact, Brian, it's really cool to have you here because you're in our commercial, actually. I know we're so proud of our Walsh College commercial, and you got to star in that, so that's great. But I really wanted to talk with you today about your journey, how you came to Walsh College, how you chose Walsh for your master's degree, and then what you learned and what words of wisdom that you would have for our students and even our alumni.
Well, Susie, again, thanks for having me here. I do remember being in here when it was the bookstore, and I bought physical books.
You did?
Yeah, I had to buy them, and then...
did you read that?
And I had to... I did very much. And I think I did pass the classes and did receive degrees from here. So
we do have that on record. Yeah, we did
great.
check.
So pleasure to be here. You know, how I found Walsh was I was a year or two into my professional career from undergrad, and I wanted to find that next step. I was eager to advance in the world, like most of our students and alums are, and potential students. And I was trying to find that leg up, and I was looking at opportunities. How can I do this faster? And I saw experience or a master's degree required. A lot of the positions I was looking at the time was management. And it was 10 years experience plus or 15 years plus and or equivalent master's degree. So I looked around. I knew I had getting into the business field. I was in a sales position, and I liked it. I was intrigued by it. I also had no idea how it all worked, how this world worked. And I thought, a master's degree, furthering my education, could really help me in a lot of respects and possibly give me that chance to maybe advance a little faster than 10 years from now, which felt like an eternity. So I looked around at potential options for doing that. And Walsh had such a great reputation for being an excellent business school. And a lot of the people at the time that I was around were Walsh alum. And it just was a natural fit. From the area. It's a great Michigan-based school, and it just felt like the right homeschool choice to make. And I'm glad I did it.
Wow. Okay, so I love what you said, too, about how, in a way, the education allowed you to accelerate your career, because that is so true. I talk to so many students and employers that say, we're looking for 10 years of experience, but if they have the master's degree, that shows us that they're serious, that they've put more time in, that they're willing to learn, they can learn faster, and they've invested in their education. So I think that's an important point to highlight. So if we have listeners out there that are thinking, that sounds like me, I just graduated and I want to get these management level jobs, I'm ready to lead, I want to make an impact, but I don't have that 10 years, don't be deterred from that. Jump in a graduate program, jump in a degree, because that also telegraphs to employers a level of sophistication, of professionalism, and of seriousness. And you found that as well.
Well said. I mean, of course, well said. And one thing I think when people assess whether to get a master's degree in particular, and even in today's current climate, is a general undergraduate degree, quote unquote, worth it, or the expense. There's a lot of rhetoric on that currently, but to the master's specifically, it really kind of changes the way you think. So I heard this when we were at our study abroad program last summer in London with the Walsh class with Dr. John Moore. And they brought in a international bank professional that was based in London. And when he was talking about education, he said, we look for people with master's degrees because when you enter it, you think one way. When you leave, you think a different way. So a lot of times people wonder, what am I going to do with this specific class? I struggle in statistics class.
Oh, yes, the stats class, exactly. And then you learn there's software to do it.
Yeah. This was quite some time ago. So the methodology of resources available in business was a little different then. But, and one could make the argument of why go through the expense, the grind, the stress. You will think of things differently when you're done with your degree. And it's true. You really can't. It's called the positive curse of knowledge. You really no longer can, go to a place where you don't know it because you know it now. So it's really hard to unthink and unlearn what you did, walking in. So the value of a degree is that you will think differently. You will see the world in business through a different lens and a different filter, and that's valuable to employers that you just may not get from just general business experience.
That is so true. Okay, I love what you said, kind of like the curse of knowledge in a way, or the burden of it, the responsibility. I just got this image too of the movie The Village. Remember where the kids saw like, wow, there's a whole world beyond this, and you can't unsee it, you can't unlearn it. And that's what's so wonderful about an education is no one can take away from you a well-earned degree of value. In fact, it's funny you said that about the master's because we just got ranked. I think payscale.com did a survey that our graduate students or our graduates of our graduate programs earning the highest within the top 15 in the country of colleges that the graduates earn the most when they finish. And, you know, we know it's not all about money, but you do invest in yourself so that you see a return. So you see a return for yourself. So you see a return for your family, for your wealth. And that's what's so great about Walsh is we know that you're sacrificing your time, your energy, your money to come here. And we want to make sure that that ROI is there. So it's not only there with the degree and the job, but like you talked about, it's the human being you become in the process. You know, critical thinking, problem solving, evaluating an issue from both sides before drawing a conclusion, which is the essence of really a learned individual. So I love hearing that. And it's great to hear that you had that experience too and that you saw that firsthand.
Well said. I absolutely agree with everything you said and how you said it. The other thing I would add that the degree, you talked about return on investment, is it had a long tail return on investment. So some of the things that I went through and learned about or wrote about or had to do a presentation with a group about a specific topic or subject or angle at something, you know, the immediate maybe return of that information or exposure to that or having to think or write about that, I might not have applied it the first few years post-graduate degree. But 9-10 years later, something similar came up, and I said, "Oh, I remember that."
Yeah.
Or there was a specific issue going on politically, and we had talked about it a few years prior in a group project, an ethics class at Walsh College,
Wow.
and who would have thought that those would intertwine? So, and I also found it really improved my writing skills. Again, we talked about technology difference, so we have different with AI and the language support tools they have out there.
Language support tools, right?
I think Walsh has a detection on the use of AI wording in their papers. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there is a software called Turnitin.
Okay.
And it's supposed to help to make sure that students are contributing their own work, but it actually uses an AI tool to do that, which is so funny. But yes, no, I know what you're saying. We have much more technology now to actually support writers, but you still have to learn the communication skill of writing. And I love when you talked about that.
Right. So those skill sets, that investment return has continued to reap benefits multiple years, even decades after completing my master's degree.
It's like it pays dividends on an ongoing basis. You know, learning compounds. So you're absolutely right. You might learn something, you don't use it right away because it's not necessarily transactional knowledge. It's transformational knowledge. It actually transforms the way you think so that you see later, wow, I'm actually communicating differently. I'm actually writing this differently because of what I learned, or I'm thinking about something. I love that. I mean, that's the return on that investment over time. It pays inordinate dividends. So one thing I wanted to talk about too is, so your journey professionally, now you have a Master of Science in Management, you got that in our graduate program. How have you seen that play out as you've worked through, and I know you work in the insurance agent business and you're a senior vice president at Capnac, and that's so exciting that you get to work with clients as well, because when people are coming to you for insurance needs, first of all, we know it's always an expense. They're always wondering, do they have to pay for? Like, is this really an expense I need? But most of the time when folks have a problem, they have a claim, that's not the best time in their life. So have your skills that you learned in the management program with leadership and communication, do you see those coming to bear when you're working with your clients?
Absolutely. And that's a great tie into what we were talking about with the long tail return on education. It really is problem solving. You had mentioned that before. It is a form of business problem solving. Insurance for businesses is a form of financing. So some of your finance skills, it's a way to pay for risk in issues and unforeseen events. It's also a way to hedge certain risk factors that might be out there so that you can take that business risk and maybe make that investment or take that product line to market or whatever it may be. So the communication skills you talked about in reference, and to be able to put that together and understand how this may fit a value proposition and how to structure this financially where it makes sense. And you had mentioned something about expense or them not liking it. It usually falls on the lower scale of fun to work with most people.
Yeah, it's not like going shopping. Yeah.
But it is something that is necessary to kind of facilitate and provide that liquidity of that risk that's inherent in business. And so it is right now a function of making sure business gets done and there's a financial recourse available if something does go wrong unexpectedly.
Yes.
So it does play. So the education has allowed all aspects of that. So you talked about the degree itself. I use communication. I use the financing piece. I use the presentation piece. You learn all the communication skills necessary to interact with both sides, not just the clients that I interact with, but the insurance companies themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So I sit as an advisor, agent, broker, and so I'm in the middle, so to speak. So I have to understand the needs of the client base and what we're trying to solve and the budget we got to work within. And then I also got to work with the insurance companies to get them comfortable with the risk, for them to offer the terms we need to negotiate and to do things they may not want to do. And it's so all of the skill sets that I learned through life, but a lot at Walsh and through the master's degree have been very valuable in executing some of those outcomes.
Yeah, it's really navigating various constituents differently because, again, how you're working with the insurance companies is different than how you're working with the clients and how you're communicating all this, and you had to go back and forth, and they're looking at you to give them the answers, and you're having to navigate that. So that's really great. The other thing I would think about is it really is a great testament to you as a leader to want to help the client first. A lot of times in business can get a different rap. People can say, oh, it's all about the money, especially in insurance, but I know you, and not only are you a board member, but you've been a great advisor to Walsh College when we've had questions about insurance, which is a huge benefit to have board members who are experts in their field. You've been able to lean in, taking a look at our policy, advising us on risk, saying, okay, here's what really happens when this comes about. And that is your level of expertise, because you've been in the insurance business now, almost 15 years, 14 years?
18
years. Oh my goodness, how time flies. Yeah. So 18 years. So the level of expertise you bring, you've seen so much happen, and there's no substitute for that type of knowledge either. And that's why it's so great to have you on our board and also as a resource for our students. Because I know you've talked to a couple of our students before that have been curious about the insurance industry or curious about careers and how to pick one. And, you just put that time in to learn that. And I think that's just really great. Kapnick is very fortunate to have someone who has that level of expertise, but also has the focus on helping the client, because that's how you get other clients. Clients talk and they tell their friends and their family, I work with so-and-so, this is somebody you can trust. And because of that endorsement, people will do business with you. So I think that's great. And that's just a great testament to Walsh College alumni. But let's go into that a little bit more too. So talk about your approach to when you work with clients with insurance, the client first approach. I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, first of all, thank you for that compliment. It's my pleasure and honor to be able to serve Walsh on the board and to be able to help students and alumni alike. So I appreciate the opportunity you afford for that. In terms of the question of approaching them with clients, it really is client first. It really is understanding what's important to them, what their needs are, what their risks are, and what potential problems may be there or what problem is there that needs to be solved. I don't need to create problems for people. We don't need to create extra work. We all know how much everyone has to do. So it really is a problem-solving venture that I would engage with any client or potential client. So it is about what is the issue at hand or issues, and are there pragmatic solutions that we can bring? Are there new ideas or new ways to look at this to help fix that and put it in a better spot than when I found it?
Yeah, and I love how you stay on top of the latest trends in the field. I know you were just featured in the Insurance and Indemnity new publication of the State Bar of Michigan. They asked you to write an article about insurance, specifically cyber insurance, which is a growing area that we're seeing. But also talk a little bit about, I know. So at Kapnick, you guys did this great thing where you did a behavioral assessment and you looked at qualities of how you lead and how you communicate. And what did you learn from that? And talk about your decision to share that so openly on your website profile. Because I remember I saw that and I thought, this is amazing. I would want to work with somebody that is willing to share this, that is so brave to say, hey, here are my communication strengths. Here's where I tend to lean behaviorally. Here's how I communicate. Here's how I lead. And I want my clients to know that so they know me and they know who they're working with.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's a lot there. I think, this still is a human-to-human business. It's a people business. People work for people. So we use those assessments to help internally to help understand working with our teammates.
Yeah.
What best communication styles work, what other tendencies and behaviors, and how do we harmonize that? How do we do that best? And how does someone need to see information? When do they need to see it? But it really works with clients, because again, it's people to people. And I think you had said something earlier about insurance and just what people might think about it. And there's a generally negative perception about insurance. At least I had that when I was first approached about entering the industry. It was a hard no.
It was a hard no, yeah.
But I didn't understand the full aspect of it, and that's a whole different conversation. Yeah, but I think that perception exists for a reason. And the reason I wanted to share with clients to bring full circle to your question or point is, I want them to see how I operate, what's important to me, what are my tendencies, and in there is that I'm happen to be very cautious. I want things to be proven to be the right thing before we just take a full swing at this, and put everything at it, and maybe shift all our resources towards this idea if we don't know if it's true. So that I want clients to see that. There could be times where I'm not the type of personality that they need or want, or I might be the right complement for whatever the risk tolerance is, whatever it is the goals are of the organizations around risk management, around insurance. So I felt it was great to be as transparent so people knew what I was coming from, but also on this negative connotation thing that I kind of started is to help kind of alleviate that some, that it's not this scam or this ripoff, although there are frustrating aspects. Don't get me wrong, my business is very frustrating. I'm sure a lot of people have their own war stories within their own industries. But it isn't Brian first. You had mentioned clients first. This isn't, it's not necessarily Brian saying this from a sales pitch type of way. It really is, read the report. Mm-hmm. This is how I'm wired. This is how it's hardwired. This is how it's been nurtured in me. My experiences have really shaped me to be this type of professional, this type of advisor. And if you look in there, one of the key words that I took away from this and it helped me understand myself better in my approach to clients is this duty I feel. This, and which is an interesting word. I know you have a legal background. It's a very legal term.
It is the legal term, yes.
So this duty, and it helps explain a lot. So again, back why I'm bringing all this up is it really is to give clients choice, transparency on what the motivations are and where we're trying to go and how I approach things.
Yeah, I love that. So many things you said I want to highlight too. One is the sense of duty and responsibility. So thinking about this from a client standpoint, if I'm coming to an insurance agent, I want to know that they're going to approach things cautiously. So that's actually good. But sometimes that's helpful to know, by the way, if I recommend this product or if I say, have you thought about it this way? That isn't me trying to sell it to you. That's me with an eye looking out for your business because I feel I have a duty to you to tell you I've seen this happen before. It may not have happened to you yet, so it doesn't feel like it could because everybody's like, oh, what are the odds? And it is an odds game. And hopefully, by and large, most people won't even need to activate the insurance. It's there if you need it, but hopefully you don't need it. Although the double-edged sword then is, but then I've paid for it. I always think, oh, that's just a cost of doing business. That's just something that comes along, like you've said, as peace of mind. So you can sleep at night knowing what I have worked so hard for all these years, all that time and sweat and effort, I'm not going to lose because of one financial event, because of a fire, because of a flood, something like that. But the other piece of it I think is important is you and I were talking about this in terms of, so I may not approach things from a sense of caution. I mean, I'm always thinking about what's the worst that can happen, but I tend to look at the opportunities and the events and like, what can we do here? Which is great, except that sometimes when we were communicating, even in the board level, I would think, oh, he doesn't think this is a good idea, or he doesn't trust that we can execute this. And you're thinking, I just want to make sure we've looked at all alternatives. So the reason that's so helpful is many times we filter the world through the way that we would react if we were in that person's shoes. And so, for example, using me as an example, I might say, well, if I reacted that way, I'd be thinking all these things. And you're going, no, I'm actually thinking this, right? So I love that because that really brings that person, that human element to insurance. I know we talk about AI and machine learning being big and emerging. However, when it comes down to dealing with humans that are in real life situations, that are scared, that are afraid, that are nervous, that are anxious, that are angry, that have emotions, human beings are best equipped to do that. And that's where having that human being at the other end of the phone, when someone calls and says, you're never going to believe what happened, what do I do, is so important, because you can reassure them and say, great, here's how we're going to work this through, right? No one was hurt. And if someone's hurt, I'm so sorry. Here's how I'm going to help you. And I think that's really, really important. And that's the human side of business that we love to talk about at Walsh, because we want to see our students and our alumni living our mission in the world and making such a positive contribution.
Well said. I don't have much to add to that.
Well, let's add this. So if you were talking to a student, a prospective student, someone, let's say, that's interested in a graduate degree, because there's a lot of talk nowadays about, okay, I have an undergrad. I've talked to a lot of alumni that say, I don't think I want to go back to school. Did you find that graduate school was different than undergrad? And if so, how?
Great question. I did. I found graduate school, one, I was different. So my experiences were different. So when I was completing my undergrad, so it's a compare or contrast type of answer. What was it like for my undergrad, and what was it like during my graduate? The graduate, I was young. I didn't have a lot of life experience. I was just figuring the world out. And I was growing up still. I was still maturing and all those different things. So the information and the academic information, but I saw it one way, and I don't know if I truly understood it. I did well. I scored well. I graduated with the honors that you would expect if you put work towards it. But when I approached it, when I started my graduate studies, the information looked different to me. Yeah. Some of the information I felt like, am I relearning my undergrad? But then I really, as I think back on it, reflect on it, I actually was learning it for the first time. The information, some of it might have overlapped. Not all of it, not saying it's just a complete repeat, but I saw things differently. I had different experiences. And I think every student that takes that on for a graduate degree that has a little bit of professional experience, or they're looking at it for the first time as maybe someone in their 30s or 40s. Maybe they haven't been in the workforce and they're using this as a way to get in. The information will look different because they're different. Yep. And therefore the experience is entirely different the whole way through.
Oh, I love that, because we filter the world through our experiences. And we actually, it's kind of like sometimes you'll watch a movie twice or three times, or you read a book and you think, I'm picking up so much more the second and third time through, because that repetition and deepening that knowledge as well, especially in business. Sometimes if you have a business undergrad, I've heard from a lot of students that, their graduate work, they felt it was familiar. They were able to build on it. They were able to go deeper. They were able to go to the applied standpoint from it. But what I liked too is thinking, our program, you can do one class at a time. So in undergrad, I don't know what yours was like, but I had like 4 or 5 classes going on at once. And I was like, oh, do I read this? Is it this? Is it history? Is it, whereas now you can really hone in and focus on your area. And I know some of our students have said that's really great. It doesn't feel as chaotic or as cumbersome as undergrad, even though it's a higher level of study. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, is you're able to learn it at a much deeper and more synthesizing level than maybe at the didactic level that we had at undergrad. And that's what's so great about a grad degree, is it allows you to get that level of specialty. So in this world of AI and machine learning and automation, when a lot of the jobs that, they might be very valuable jobs, but a company might decide, look, I can get a machine to do this faster. I mean, I'm not saying better, but faster, and I don't have to pay a person to do it. I can make a one-time investment in a machine. We may see companies go that way for cost. Whereas those that have that advanced training, that knowledge, that leadership, that ability to have leadership communication, those are going to be the folks that are going to get promoted and that are going to lead and that are going to secure their future. And that's why we're so proud of that at Walsh, because we are seeing our leaders out there and doing that. So
you brought up a good point. You had asked about it, and I might not have hit this point. The pace that you can take the education at Walsh specifically was one of the main attractions to me finally choosing Walsh as a school for my graduate degree. The 4 semesters. Yeah. The 4, 11-ish, 11.5-ish weeks, right?
11.5-ish, 11 weeks.
One's 11, so one's 12 weeks, and the rest are 11.
I think it's 10 to 11, because everybody's like, what is that 11th week? That 11th week is really the final project, the presentation, but students do say, oh, it's nice to have that 11th week,
I could break it up, because what you're describing in undergrad is what I felt too, which is I had 4, 5, 6 classes I was carrying. It was a lot to complete everything I needed to do. It was stressful, and I don't know how much I retained. It was really kind of, I was able to space it out. So I was paying for my graduate out of pocket, and I needed the pace to space it out and to pace it so I could, one, accomplish it in a way. I was working full time. I needed a cost pace out too. I needed to be able to pay class by class. I needed to be able to take the time to get through it. So the 4 semesters allowed me to achieve what you were talking about, a little more depth and just a better cadence for me that worked for my learning style, given what was going on in my life.
That's
so
so
I was trying
perfect.
to accomplish it.
Yeah, and we have heard that from a lot of students. What's really nice is a lot of our students don't graduate with a lot of debt. I mean, they have some, but they don't have as much as you would see if you spent that time just studying or in the 4 and 5 classes. Remember when finals week would come along, you're like, oh, I got a final every day this week, right?
Yeah.
And with this, it's like, oh, I can take 1, I can take 2. So it's a much better pace for our students. I think that's great. What professional advice would you give? Like if you could go back in a DeLorean time machine, for those of us that are old enough to know what the DeLorean is, if you were to go back in time, what would you tell someone at your point in your career, maybe right before you got into graduate studies at Walsh or even before then, that you wish you knew today? Or you wish you knew then?
I think an advantage that people, I think they fail to recognize, and it's just part of the human curse condition, is the latitude that they have because of their age, the youth. The younger you are, the more risks you can take. I think my own personal experience and filter, it comes out in the personality report you were talking about that I have on that site. I was more risk adverse.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
think my advice would be take more risk. Take that extra leap. So we're talking a lot about Walsh and education and enrolling in a graduate degree. Some people are intimidated by biting that off or committing to that. So that I would categorize that maybe that's a big risk. I don't know if I can. There's a little bit of fear behind that, a little trepidation.
Sure.
I would say, especially earlier on, that is an advantage that you lose over time, and then that's what people looking back when they're DeLorean time machine saying, "I wish I would have done X, Y, and Z." I think that regret is not understanding the value of time that you have right now and in front of you. That's one level of just personal advice. From professional advice, it is the traditional cliche terms. They're cliche for a reason, and because they are true, and they remain to be true. Is invest in yourself, put yourself first, invest early, do those minor, basic, not very exciting things. Doing those consistently as early on as possible would put you in such a great position a decade or two later.
Yeah,
That
because
would
it
be
compounds. Like all of that
Exactly.
compounds, like you said. I think that's so perfect. And you're someone that does that. I know you're always sending me books that you're reading or you're audibling or podcasts. And so I just think that's so great because when I think about people I want to do business with, I want to do business with the people that love what they're doing, that feel a sense of duty and responsibility, that actually approach. It's so funny. Maybe that's part of how you got into insurance is there was a part of you that said, I want to be able to do this for somebody else. I want to be able to have a sense of duty and responsibility for companies and businesses bigger than myself. And I want to be able to do that in a way that looks out for them, even though they may not see the risk. I want to help them with that. So that's just so great. And then someone that invests in themselves and their training.
You're actually dead on. And ultimately why I said earlier, I said a hard no when I first was approached and the consideration of it. And I had a lack of understanding. But once I understood, especially the commercial aspect of the insurance, the whole industry, how it works, my role, others' roles, once I understood that, it was two things. It was the ability to form these relationships with people, meaningful, structured, where we're doing things together to help each other. That was very important to me. That gave me a lot of personal satisfaction. It helps drive me.
Yep.
And second was the technical aspect of insurance. It is contract. There are various scenarios to consider. Things are always changing dynamically. And so that continued push to have to learn to get deeper technical knowledge was something I always wanted to keep in my professional setting. It also drives and gives me satisfaction and professionally speaking as well. So those were the two reasons. Now you talk about duty and responsibility.
Yeah.
I have a client said to me one time, I want somebody that works for me as my agent and advisor. I want somebody up at night, worried about my program. I want them to care. And I was up last night worried about someone's program. So
It's great. Yeah, I mean, it's
people,
great.
People get that with me, and it has to go back to that sense of duty and responsibility. And I just care. I want to do it right. And I want the best outcome. I talk about potential clients. We said that earlier. If we can't do it right, if I can't do it right, we're not going to do it at all. It only should be done right. So that's how we approach, and just to kind of tie that all together. both the duty, the technical, and then doing it for others. It's got to be done right, or we're just not going to do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to them. It's not worth it to us.
Yeah, and this is how you move through the world. Like, I just want to highlight that and really commend you, because this isn't just like your sales pitch for business. This is actually how you operate. It's how you operate as an alum, as a friend, as a board member, as a colleague, as a professional. And, it's like, this is amazing to find a person you can do business with that actually operates in a way for their own standards. You have your own way of showing up that happens to align so well with the clients. And that's what's so important. But even that knowledge, that technical expertise, insurance is changing so quickly. I mean, obviously my background in law, I'm seeing it all the time in the bar journal. Oh, this got repealed, or this new legislation came out with Michigan. And you have to stay on top of that. And if you get agents that are saying, you know what, I'm at the end of my career, I don't know if I really want to brush up on that, I'll just kind of go back and defer to somebody else, you could miss something really important for your client. And you take that very seriously, that sense of duty, that sense of responsibility, and that sense of connection. So in a lot of ways, it might be, boy, this really is your superpower and the way that you show up for clients. And, we talk a lot in life too about decision points. You talked about, well, I was looking to come to Walsh, I could have gone here. I look at you and I think you would have been successful no matter what happened, no matter where you went, and I'm glad you came to Walsh, but no matter where you went, no matter no matter what, career you chose, and also no matter what company you worked for, because the essence of how you show up for clients and the work you do isn't dependent on that. It's truly dependent on your own standards. In fact, I think it was Tom Brady that said, keep your own scorecard. Because there was one time, I think the Patriots might have won a game, and then they were all excited and happy. And he's like, no, we didn't do all these things right. Even though we might have beat this team, we need to keep our own scorecard. And that's how you move through the world. And I think that's exceptional, because that sets you up kind of as a Renaissance person. No matter where you are in life, no matter what situation you're deposited in, you will figure it out. You may not always feel you'll figure it out, but you will figure it out.
I wish I had that comment. Thank you for all that. And you're being very complimentary. I appreciate that.
But I've seen it too. Like, that's the nice thing, is we never see this in ourselves. We only see it in others. And then it's up to us to say, okay, what is it that I'm not seeing? And you're really good about that.
So there are multiple people that have helped provide that as a guidepost, as mentor roles or people I'm around. Another piece of advice is, I'm thinking of things from that question earlier, is who are you around? Who are you spending time with? Who are you looking up to? Who are you seeking advice from? What are they doing? Are you modeling or studying people that are in a position that you might want to be? And find out, learn from them. Ask. And so I'm around you a lot, and we get a chance to have a great relationship. And you're being humble on how much your thirst for knowledge and how fast you can process things, how many degrees and certifications you have. And I do get, that rubs off on me because of my exposure to you. You have a lot that you share with a lot of people. And I always talk about this in a joking, but also a very true way. The level of commitment you bring to learning, the level of commitment you bring to Walsh, the energy you bring is 24/7. It is 24/7. So I'm inspired by that.
Thank you so much.
And I do think I have been fortunate enough to be around others that have also embodied that. And I've learned from that and modeled that. And I've luckily wanted to be that at different points in my life. I maybe wasn't sure if I wanted to be, because sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't always feel like it's always going to work out. And most of the time it doesn't feel like it's going to.
Yeah.
And
so true. Yeah.
The mentors and the people you're around and the people I happen to be in my orbit, whether I consciously know it or not, are influencing how I look at a situation. Maybe do I do that extra thing? Do I look at that deeper technical dive? And the people I'm around right now, fortunately, are doing that and then some, and I have to just keep up.
That is awesome, Brian. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. It's an absolute privilege, and it's easy with Walsh because I love Walsh College. So, I mean, it sounds like it's a lot, but 24/7, I mean, I think about it all the time. So I love that. But, you highlighted something really important, is not only, I think, are you putting yourself in the position to be around an environment and people who you want to, emulate, but you're becoming that for others too. And you're kind of seeing that, right? Like, I mean, you're at the position where I'm sure people are coming to you at the job, at Cabnex, saying, hey, can I get your feedback on this? Can I get your input? They're looking at you as that expert, which creates a sense of responsibility as well. Because now we have to model the very behavior that we before were kind of learning and training up on. So I agree with you. Your environment is very important, and constantly auditing who you spend your time with. It is hard. Sometimes we had friends and families that we say, oh, this is a person I know, I've known them for years, but you know what? I don't really feel like a better person when I'm around them. And those are those decisions. What's nice about Walsh is you get that community and connection. even in our hybrid environment, you can connect with students on Zoom in the classroom. You can connect with faculty. You did that study abroad. I remember you came back. So Brian was a mentor to our study abroad. It was incredible how you did this. You went on the trip with the students. You opened doors for them to meet with companies when they were in Europe, when they were in England. And then it was really great because you guys debriefed at the end and you said, this experience was such an amazing, fun time that we had together. You're in a different country, you're learning different things, and you were able to have that connection and community. That is the essence of the Walsh College experience.
Absolutely agree. It gave access to information, experiences, and people I wouldn't have otherwise had any opportunity to
And didn't you say at first you weren't sure you wanted to go? You're like,
Absolutely.
I don't know if I want to go. I have other things that I have to do. And it's always like if we do that and we put ourselves in those situations, it ends up paying lifetime dividends.
These small sayings that I have that are cliche sayings, but most good things that have happened to me are on the other side of I didn't want to do it.
Ooh.
Right. Most good things are on the other side of I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's what I usually say to others, because that usually is an indication that might be hard. It might be some uncomfortableness. There might be something there of a risk. I talked about earlier my little more risk-adverse nature. And on the other side of that is going to be a better experience and a better lens to see things through that maybe I don't feel like going through at the time. But looking back, and my kind of advice again, do that.
I think that's such a high performance hack. Everything that you want, a better outcome is on the other side of, I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Yeah. You have another saying I really like, and just to speak into it real quick, you say networking never not works. I love this saying. So what does that mean?
It's similar to what we're talking about, putting yourself in these experiences. We're talking about going to London and having that opportunity with Walsh and how that class was facilitated and the instructors we had and the people that came. Putting yourself out in these situations where there's networking or a social setting, or there's a get together for some common cause, right? It could be a Walsh alumni group. It could be a social cause. Sometimes it's intimidating, and those places can be cliquey.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so those people all know each other, but every time, my own personal experience, almost every time, if not every time, there's been some weird dividend later or some payoff or somehow it all came connected. I'm sure a lot more than I consciously can kind of really recount.
Yeah.
And so I really, especially those in professional business and they're younger in their career or they're trying to figure out what they want to do or what's next, putting yourself in these settings where there's other people around, going to these experiences, you will meet connections. It will work. It will somehow come together.
Yeah.
I know that you've written books about this and you're very mindset driven. I think you have a new book coming out soon that you're working on quantum
leadership. Yeah, it's called Quantum Lead.
Yeah, and
like Quantum Leap, Quantum Lead.
Right, and so so that's about all of this being related, right? So networking never not works is what you're going to prove out in a much more academic and technical way than my little off-the-cuff saying.
You've proven it experientially, and that's really important too, to just make sure that you're in the right rooms with the right people. A lot of times people look at highly successful people like yourself and they say, he just got lucky. He just stumbled upon this. And you think, you don't know what I had to go through. You don't know the nights I was agonizing on, do I go to this event? Do I not? Is this the right decision? But it's being in the right rooms with the right people. That's how people get that Oprah Winfrey moment that they're always talking about. So that's what's really great. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoy being able to talk with our alumni, our board members, our students, and especially Brian. He has just been such a great supporter of Walsh College. He's a great example of our alumni living our mission in the world. And if you want to connect with Brian, I know he's on LinkedIn. And if you go to capnick.com, the website, if you have any insurance needs or you want to do business with Capnick or you want to explore what it is, you can check out Brian's webpage. You can look at his personality trait site. That was really insightful. So I know everyone's curious. They're going to go check that out now. But thank you so much for spending time with us today in our beautiful creator studio. And thank you for all that you do for Walsh College.
Thank you so much, Susie.
Thank you.